Welcome back. This will be the second video on the Cortina restoration. If you want to see part one where I give a bit of an introduction to the car, you can watch that just up here. So this video, we're going to be getting it on the rotisserie frame that I mentioned last time. And step number one, get all these panels off. Then we're going to be able to take the wheels off, get the suspension out, subframes, make some mounts and hang it up. Not 7/16. Much easier than trying to remember where they go later. Still don't know what I'm going to do with this glass to keep it safe. We'll cross that bridge later. It's 7 o'clock in the morning and I'm sweating bullets. Queensland. I need an extension bar. Someone's put nylock nuts on this one for some reason. These hubcaps off, you can really gauge the true depth of these wheels. They're pretty insane. We got to that back edge there on about 4 inches. I really hope that I can use these wheels because they just look freaking awesome. I've officially run out of things to do now until I find a safer home for that glass. Guess I better get on with that and get it out of the boot and then we'll get these wheels off. All right, I got that glass out now and we can get a better look at the inside of the boot floor, which I was mentioning in the last video. Here's the extent of the spot where the rear wheel goes. Doesn't actually look too bad from the inside. You can see the main base here is actually pretty good. And I've seen a lot of other cars where this panel here seems to rust out and mine seems pretty straight. Whether or not it has to come out or not to get to the inner skin here remains to be seen. I guess we'll find out later on. While we're looking on here, a quick note on this fuel tank. This is actually a Mark II tank, which is slightly larger than a Mark I. I don't want to quote the exact size in gallons because I'll probably get it wrong, but the only difference between this one and the one that would have come in the car is the sender is in a slightly different spot, but we have a Mark II sender to go with it, so there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to use it on the road and reliably have a gauge that works, as well as a little bit of extra fuel range, which is a good thing. And some of you may have noticed in the last video this absolute disaster of a parcel shelf. Why some people go to this extent to put a few speakers in is absolutely beyond me, and I cannot express how much I hate the sight of a chain drilled hole for a speaker. Rest assured, we've actually got a real nice mint parcel shelf to go in this car, which I salvaged from a parts car down at Pop-Up's farm. So we're gonna drill out all the spot welds along here and clean up the donor panel that I got. I sort of cut off more than what I needed from the other car, clean up both panels, and we'll be able to swap the mint one in, and we'll put a single speaker or 2 small ones in this centerpiece in the spot where a speaker should have gone. A sound system isn't really a huge priority for me for this car. It'll end up having a hidden Bluetooth unit, probably with only that single speaker. I don't really see myself wanting to go to the extreme of putting speakers in the front here. The Webers and exhaust are going to provide enough of a soundtrack, I think. I'll put a photo up on the screen. There's a company local to me here in Australia called Gravel Rash Audio, and they do a really cool hidden stereo setup. He even makes these little switches that replace the cigarette lighter, and they act as like an on-off switch for the module, which you can then hide under the dash. It's a pretty neat setup, and that's probably what I'm going to go with. Just keep the dash nice and sleek and minimal, and then we'll just put some USB charging ports just up in the glove box there, hidden away. I'm not too sure about these spacers. I think these might have been knocked up pretty quickly at home just to test the theory with these wheels. I don't know if I mentioned, this car's actually never moved with these wheels on. It was sort of like a bit of an experiment. As such, I don't know if these are true. We may end up just buying some aftermarket ones that have been machined up. The simplicity of these old things is just fantastic. There's just nothing going on here. We've got a bump stop, lower arm, strut, sway bar, and that's it. Let's start to drop it down. No, there are just locking tabs on here after all. All right. You can get a better look at these strut tops that I mentioned in the last video, how they've been double drilled to offset it in and give that more negative camber so to fit these wheels under the guards. We'll probably end up just welding up this second set of holes using the original ones and putting in some sort of aftermarket camber plate, like I said in the last video. Don't even remember what these were for. This is why I should always screw things back in when I'm done. It might be for master cylinders or something. All right, I think I'm gonna split these lower arms off now, and then I'll get the subframe out on its own. Of course, it started bloody spinning. All right, that is one strut relieved. Looks like we've got some Nolthane bushes in there already. All right, this side came up much easier because it's not under tension anymore, I assume. Second strut out. Oh, there's nothing that Speed 3 can't fix. All right, so with that, we have this front end of the car completely disassembled and it is ready to go on the rotisserie. So now we just need to do the same thing with the rear suspension and drive shaft. Jesus, that's tight. Let's get a bit of oil on that. All right, so as you just saw, I was just taking the rear shocks out. This is a little bit of a nasty surprise. I don't even know how this would happen, but we're probably gonna need to repair that. It looks like someone's put a huge, sort of like oversized washer underneath to spread the load, which is good. I don't know if this is actually just part of the car normally and it's just separate. I've got to check the other side, but yeah, oh well, something else to add to the list. All right, getting close to getting this back end out now. I've got the two rear shocks disconnected. I've got this sway bar mostly disconnected. Just gonna drop the leaf now. The soft line for the brake, we're just gonna cut it because it's gonna get replaced anyway. Got the tramp rods to disconnect as well. I can't believe that this car just, the main nuts here that hold the leaves onto the chassis, 1/2 inch nut. It's just small car things. All right, rear leaves are off, sway bars off, brake line gone. Now, tramp rods, front leaves, and then this thing's off. We've got a slightly bigger hammer. Oh dear. So we did it. We now have a bare shell. There's no rear suspension anymore. There is no front suspension or subframe anymore. This is everything we've taken off. And we are now ready to make some mounts for the rotisserie. The shell is actually quite bloody light now that there's nothing on it. Even just taking the wheels off makes a huge difference. Like, I can almost lift this thing off the jack stands as it is. Yeah, very cool. All right, so it's a new day now. We're gonna get stuck into making those mounts today. But before I do that, I'm just gonna take a little bit of time to organize what I've got off the car, which is where Sharpie, sandwich bag, and old biscuit tins come into play. Had to cut this one. These massive pieces of flat bar are going to be the basis of the front mounts here. They're just going to go through bumper holes and connect up to the two captive nuts on the chassis rail. Those are the two captive nuts there. They're on a little bit of an angle, as you can see, so we're going to have to make a little template to transfer those hole locations over onto my piece of flat bar. That level may not make the noise, but there's definitely some cardboard aided design going on here. So I've just trimmed up this template a little bit. You can see we are going to have a bit of an issue. This line is my level reference. These little detents here represent the front of the car where this bar is going to pass through in the hole in the apron. You can see if I line up those points and keep it level, this hole is going to be in no man's land. So I am probably going to have to run this bar at a slight angle and then compensate for that on the rotisserie side. You're kidding me. Templates trimmed down, got my hole locations here. I've just made a reference from my straight edge that I took on the car further up here with this paint pen, once I found one that worked. So now if I drill 2 holes anywhere along this line, that should give me a nice level mounting on the rotisserie arm, and then I can just trim off what I don't need. Got this mounted up in the drill press now, got some cutting oil in there. I'm gonna drill a pilot hole and then take it out to about 10 mil. Got the speed turned down a fair bit now. I think that'll make it a bit smoother. That's much nicer. So I've just got to make up some little spaces to take in the gap from my piece of flat bar over across to the chassis rail. So I just found this piece of scrap round stock. It's already got a hole drilled through it. Just going to split it in half and that'll give me 2. And then I'm going to have to make another 2 from scratch. So we'll just go through this with the parting tool and then we'll make the other 2 spaces. Two down, 2 to go. I've just cleaned up this piece of spare stock and now we'll turn this into some more of these spaces. Yes. Hot. Finally, 4 spaces. These are our finished front mounts. I've just had to relieve a little bit of metal from these points here where it sort of fits into the apron. We are ready to throw these on the car now. there's our front mount. It's kind of crazy how much time it takes to do what just looks like drilling some holes in some pieces of flat bar. It actually took quite a few hours. Anyway, let's get on with the rear mounts. We're back. It's another new day now. It's New Year's Eve. These rear mounts have thrown a little bit of a spanner in the works. If we have a look here, this rear mount, which I was going to attach to, it looks like there's a few compromised parts in it, but what's actually worse is the other side. It might be hard to see, but there's a bit of a crack. So I was originally going to attach these rear mounts to these bumper mount spots, and these match up to the holes that you can see on the outside here, but I think that's just going to be a little bit too risky. So what we're going to do instead is have some long arms that come out underneath the car and then attach to the rotisserie point just here, and we're going to be able to attach those using these existing holes in the chassis rail from where a tow bar used to be fitted. It'll mean that the mount has to be a little bit more complicated because it'll be a flat bar with sort of a standoff platform to sort of bring it up to the height of the chassis rail. We'll try and breeze through that today and finally get this thing up in the air. So we've traveled forward in time a little bit now, and I've got some material prepared for our rear mounts. I've got these top spreader plates, which go through the chassis rail with these bolts. We've got a lower plate, and we've got this piece of square tubing, which is going to be a standoff to give us the height we need for these pieces of angle to clear the lower valance panel. So we're going to get the welder out now and weld up these standoffs. We'll check them for clearance again. Then we can mock up the pieces of angle hanging off the bottom at the correct angle, and we can tack that into place as well. Just finished welding up these standoffs. We're ready to now mock up our pieces of angle and get those welded on as well. Here's my finished rear mounts, and there is the rotisserie. It's time to lift the rear end up and get it mounted, and then we can hang the front, and hopefully this car can spin upside down then. We're getting real close to getting our money shot now. You just saw me adjusting the balance point on the rotisserie, which you do by turning this long piece of Acme thread. It just shifts the center of the mass of the shell along this pivoting axis here. So we've got the car up a fair bit higher now. We've got it sitting nice and level, front to back. We're ready to give it a spin. This ended up being a fair amount of work to make these mounts to get the shell hung up on the rotisserie. Yeah, it took a few more days than I thought, but how good is this? Just going to be so easy to work on the car now. Going to be able to do all sorts of welding repairs and paint stripping and just getting into awkward places while being very comfortable and just standing upright. Definitely going to be well worth it. If you've made it this far, thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching me get this thing turned upside down, and thanks very much to everyone that's jumped on board and subscribed to see the progress on the car. That first video really did quite well, a lot better than what I was expecting, and that's pretty cool. Yeah, so thanks very much. I really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments, what are you looking forward to the most seeing on this project? Where I'm gonna go from here, I'm not really sure. I think we'll probably start cleaning up the underside of the shell here and addressing some of the low-hanging fruit in terms of welding and repairs go. Things like cracks and small pinholes, we might start welding those up. I need a little bit of practice on my welding, so better to start with the areas that you won't see when the car's done. But I've also got a lot of parts in the cupboard that need bead blasting and painting and restoring, so we're going to be doing that along the way as well. I go back to work pretty soon. I'm on holidays at the moment, so I don't know what sort of schedule I'm going to be able to have with these videos. It'll probably be somewhere in between Home Built by Jeff and Bad Obsession Motorsport. Yeah, so I'll do my best, but I guess I can't really promise anything. I want to try and break the videos up into logical parts that sort of have a bit of a story through them. So I don't want to be just rushing through and making short videos. I think the videos are better when they're a little bit longer. Let me know in the comments, what sort of videos do you want to see? Do you like the longer videos? Do you like the idea of short updates? Maybe a bit of both? I'd be keen to know what you think. And I think that's a pretty good place to call it. So yeah, thanks again. Thanks very much. If you haven't seen the first video where I give an introduction to the project, then you might want to watch that up here. That'll probably give you some much needed context. And yeah, cheers. I'll see you on the next one.